Hello and welcome to Le Course on Tête podcast in association with Peloton Magazine. Welcome as well to Aerogram listeners and Peloton Magazine subscribers. My name's OJ Borg. I'll be hosting occasional podcasts throughout this year's Tour de France. This is the first of 5. And like all good stories, and the Tour de France is possibly the greatest sporting story of all, let's begin at the start. Tonight, we're going to preview the 2020 Tour de France, a tour that lots of people didn't think was going to happen. Will it reach Paris? Well, there's only one way to find out. Who's with me? Well, 2, and I hope they don't mind me saying, grizzled members of the cycling press pack. Between them, they have ridden the roller coaster of professional cycling over the years, but still, and I love this, have an infectious love for the sport, which I think shines through in everything they write. They are Jeremy Whittle, who is covering the tour for The Guardian and author of Bad Blood and Ventoux. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello there.
Did you mind me calling you grizzled?
A little bit.
Okay. Well,
I've been called worse.
You are grizzled, but in a beautiful way. And also with me is veteran cycling writer William Fotheringham, writer of best-selling cycling books on Eddy Merckx and Bernardino, and a man with, and I think there was confusion between, was it 27 or 28 tours behind him?
It's 27, we reckon. 27,
you reckon? What was the best tour you've been on, that you've worked on?
Probably my first. But I also actually, in a really bizarre masochistic way, I particularly liked the 1998 tour because it was a real journalistic exercise, and it really pushed you as a journalist. It made you really work hard. I mean, it was emotionally very, very traumatic because of all the sort of nasty stuff that came out of the cupboard, but journalistically and professionally, it was something I simply wouldn't have missed.
And just to show how well qualified you are for this, how many have both of you eaten of those little madeleines, the little free cakes they give away in the press room at the end of each stage? How many do you think you've eaten over the years?
I don't do that anymore.
Oh, I used to do loads, but luckily I haven't been for a few years. I've lost some weight, fortunately. Hundreds.
They are. I used to fill my pockets with them on the tours I've done. Right, let's have a quick explanation of what La Course on Tête is. I think, using my GCSE French, it means the head of the course. Just give us an explanation of what La Course on Tête is and what you're doing with it, William.
So La Course on Tête it's a new website we launched in mid-May, late May. The name is taken from, basically La Course on Tête is the way that Eddy Merckx used to race. And so I had the idea for calling the website that after I did my Eddy Merckx book. I thought it'd be a good name for a website because it means ahead of the pack, as you say. And it's sort of, it's just a nice name, and it has resonances for most hardcore cycling fans. And so the idea is that a group of us writers get together and produce what you might call long form journalism. We don't necessarily stick to a news agenda. We write what we feel is important and what matters to us, and we hope that our passion comes through and draws in the readers. And it's really nice having Jeremy along again because it feels a bit like putting the band back on the road, because obviously 20 years ago, a little bit more, 21 years ago or something, we launched Pro Cycling Magazine together. So it's just a really nice experience to be back in harness with Jeremy, really.
Yeah, I think it's something as well that we felt that because of the way that we've both written for major newspapers in Britain as well, and we also felt that there are kind of opportunities to maybe be more reflective and produce more analytical pieces and more insight based on our experience of all the endless years of covering races that we've both done. We felt there were maybe less opportunities these days and less space in newspapers to really write those kind of analytical reflective pieces. So we wanted to find a space where we could do that.
And it's also bizarrely nice. I find. I mean, I didn't know how this would work out. It's really nice seeing what the other writers come up with, and that's very stimulating because we don't really have a particularly a particular structure to it in terms of editorial. We just do what we fancy on a sort of roughly timed basis, and it's really interesting seeing what people come up with. And it's also really interesting not having an editor telling you to write 1,000 words or 700 words. You can write if something works out at 800 words, if it works out at 1,100 words, it doesn't matter. And it's kind of liberating. It's just fun, and it's passion, and hopefully people will appreciate that.
So if you can do what you want and you can riff on what you want, in cycling terms, which rider would you be who can do what he wants within the peloton? Who can attack on stage and you can set off?
I think it's the Julien Alaphilippe of editorially. You don't quite know what you're getting. He does what he does what's does what strikes him as the right thing to do at the right time, and quite possibly doesn't always get it right. But I think Julien Alaphilippe is a good parallel. What do you reckon, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that we're looking to hit some real peaks sometimes, and we're also looking to prod people a bit and provoke people as well. Certainly, some of the things I've written for the site, I hope that they've pushed angles a bit more, perhaps, than I would if I was writing for a newspaper, and they've been a bit more personal too as well. So you get a bit more personal freedom. We can be a bit more opinionated. So, yeah, I mean, it's not free form, but at the same time, we've got a great roster of writers behind the two of us as well. So, we're very excited about it.
Well, without coming across as a fanboy, I love what you write. So let's get into this. And let's start with, as I said before, a preview of the 2020 Tour de France. It would be easy to say there's never been a tour like this before, but, it's an emotional roller coaster, the Tour de France, Jeremy. Has there been a tour like this before?
I mean, somebody said to me the other day that it's interesting, William just mentioned the 1998 Tour de France, which was really dominated by doping scandals, and there was lots of doubt whether that tour would actually make it to Paris. Even within the first few days, as it started falling apart, it did somehow. But this feels like potentially nothing to do with doping, of course, but potentially because of these other issues all around the pandemic, all around the virus, because of the growing controversy over false positives, which is something that's emerging from Nice, where the race is starting, that teams are very anxious that this new rule that's been introduced, saying that if two members of an entourage test positive for COVID-19 within the 7 days, the team will be withdrawn from the race. That's already become a controversial point, and it's something that's going to rumble on through the race. So it feels a bit like it could be a bit like the Festina Tour, where you start to see riders being pulled out and teams withdrawing and arguments in the open in front of the media, which was and this ramping up of tension. But I guess the other parallel would be, was it 68, William, when Charles de Gaulle insisted that the Tour went ahead because of the protests?
Yes, I think there's a parallel there, and I wrote about that back in the spring when we were wondering whether there would be a Tour de France at all. And the other parallel, I think there is a parallel with the first tour they ran after the war, when life was returning to normal, except obviously that would have been the script we would have written back in March. The tour will happen in September. Life will be returning to normal. Well, it isn't, and that's the sort of weirdness of it. It's sort of it's sort of faux normality, and it's. I don't think there's been a tour like this, because I think Jeremy's right, there are those echoes of 1998 when no one knew whether the tour would reach Paris, but and also when to some extent, well, to a great extent in 98, they were making it up as they went along. There wasn't a structure for it, and I think there are elements of that. I think the difference perhaps with 98 is that you get the feeling that there is a sort of collective will here among pretty much everyone who's associated with the race. The will is that this race this race. Everyone wants this race to go ahead. Everyone knows the positivity that this race can bring. And it's very interesting seeing some of the things on social media, people saying they are desperate for the tour to happen. They're so excited about it. And I mean, you always get excitement around the tour, but I think around this one, because we've waited longer for it, because we've all spent 6 months, roughly speaking, maybe 5.5 months, whatever, in this state of not normality. Well, the tour, even if the tour isn't normal, it will represent a kind of normal. If that makes some kind of sense.
I think also people are kind of starved, aren't they, of any kind of sense of festivity. And as you say, it's a return to normality. It's a huge cultural tradition, not just as a sporting event in France, that the tour, rolls around the country and is embraced by the populace. But it's also, I think, particularly keenly felt this year because it's been so miserable for so many people. It's been such a tough year. So I think there is a general will to try and get it through. But at the same time, I know that, having spoken to a few of the teams today, I know that there are they accept that if the government intervenes in France and says, we are sorry, but the rates of infection of the virus are too high, there's too much risk of this continuing, you've got to stop, that they will understand that.
I mean, if you've been to the tour before, you know it's a small city that rolls around France for nigh on a month. It's a lot of people, a lot of cars, the rest of it. Even though they've cut down the amount of journalists there and the amount of people are there, it's still a lot of people travelling around roads from city to city when infection is still an issue.
Yes, it is. But I mean, you're absolutely right. And I found somewhere, one of the books I was reading recently said, ironically, this was written nearly 20 years ago, that the tour is a perfect breeding ground for a pandemic because people are so close together. Well, okay, what they've done is they've clearly taken huge steps to make the tour as socially distanced as possible within its own environment. And the other thing that the tour has got on its side is that, as far as we know, there haven't been any clusters associated with bike races of any kind. And there have been quite a lot of bike races in France in the last month, not just professional ones, but every day on Twitter I'm seeing amateur races with all the British riders riding them. So, and it seems, I mean, again, I'm not an expert, but it just seems that outdoors sporting events, bike racing doesn't seem massively conducive to transmission. Now, obviously the tour is different because people will come to the tour from far and wide, or they used to. But I just wonder whether, we've all adapted our lifestyles in the face of this. And I would, if you're a French parent with your kids, well, you might well think twice about going and watching the tour on the roadside this year. Maybe think 3 times, and maybe think, well, you know what, it'll be a flipping good afternoon at home, and we can, the tour might be going 15 mile away, but we can see it going. We'll be able to see the helicopters from from a few miles away. We can watch it on television. Let's not go to the tour. And I think there may well be a sense of that. It will. I would have thought it would eliminate a lot of those casual fans, just because they'll be going, well, you know what, maybe not this year.
I've never been more excited for the Tour de France. Even in the years when a British rider was going to win the Tour, for some reason this year, and I think maybe because it has been a truncated season and we've waited so long for it, I've never been this excited.
I think the one other thing is that it's not in high holiday season as well. So it's basically in September. So the French are back at school, the French are back at work. Most of Europe won't be traveling around Europe anyway at the moment because of all the complexities of moving around Europe as well. So the crowds are going to be smaller because of that. They are going to close a lot of the climbs to any vehicles that aren't fully accredited vehicles. I think a few days in advance as well. They're going to be more strict than they are normally about that. People, I think, walking or on bikes will be okay. They're going to check that everybody's masked up. I mean, they're going to do everything they can. All of that said, it is still, 3,000 people moving around from town to town, changing hotels, going to restaurants, going to bars. They're masked up, they're socially distancing. But we know, don't we, from everything that we've learned about the pandemic, if you have a lot of people in close proximity, not everyone's wearing a mask all the time. We know what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, you wrote this, back in May when we launched the site. You wrote about these risks, and I don't think that position has fundamentally changed. It is a risk, and it's like I wrote at the weekend. It will either seem like a fantastic gamble which has paid off by the 20th of September, or it'll seem like an act of folly. And genuinely, no one knows which it will be.
The thing about the tour, though, just to wrap that up, it is a phenomenal logistical achievement every year. I mean, I don't think people understand, unless you've worked on it for a few years, how extraordinarily accomplished they are logistically. They love challenges like this, and they would love to get to Paris, having got through with the minimum amount of kind of withdrawals of riders or minimum scares in terms of the pandemic, and with the most accomplished logistical tour perhaps ever in the most demanding circumstances.
So, Jeremy, I was asked the other day what I reckon the chances of getting to Paris. Well, I reckon 50-50. What do you reckon? Put a percentage on it. I
think that's a good shout. I mean, it depends what the rates are like. It doesn't just depend on what's happening on the race, does it?
No.
What the rates are like around the race, around France in general, because the government will be watching the whole picture. They won't just be watching, how the teams are behaving in the hotels. It's a much bigger picture than that.
I'm wondering whether we might see stages truncated or relocated. If some area is particularly bad, because the problem with the pandemic is the picture changes so rapidly. I mean, in 2 weeks' time, let us say the picture in Grenoble or Lyon could be very different to what it is now. That's the great uncertainty. Anyway, as you say, let's actually move on and maybe talk about the race.
Well, yeah, the tour's happening. And I think, as everyone said, it's a marvel that it's happening, whether it had to happen for both the cycling world or otherwise, or the watching public, it is happening. So let's talk about the parkour then. I mean, the reason I've also been very excited about the start of this tour is it's arguably the most brutal tour for how long, Jeremy? People were talking about, was it 20 years ago that there was something as hard as this with Cat 1 climbs on the second day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got a very hard opening weekend. William and I were talking about this on the phone the other day, and actually William made a very good point, which is that it's not the highest tour. It's got a lot of climbs, and it's got some very brutal days. There's stages in the middle of the race that, again, they're not particularly high climbs, but they're steep and there's lots of them. And it also, I think if it had been in high summer, some of these stages would have been particularly awful. But because they're kind of in the autumn, because they're kind of getting into autumn, they might be quite different. You know, there's a stage, stage 13 to Puy-Mary in the Massif Central near to Clermont-Ferrand, and that has 7 climbs. It's a really brutal stage on paper, but you know, it could be quite fresh and kind of, if it was 36 degrees in high summer, that would be a really torrid stage. But I don't think the weather will be like that. So for me, the opening weekend, I think William feels the same way. The opening weekend, which contains a really kind of punch in the stomach opening for the first three or four stages, I think that's going to show us an awful lot very quickly of where we are at in terms of who the favourites will be.
Yeah, the first 6 days you've got 3 climbing days basically. Day 2, day 4, and day 6 is the hardest of the lot with that really hard summit finish at Montégoal. And I was thinking, well, I don't think you can say it's the hardest ever tour because the tour has changed so much over the years. I was thinking, you know, for example, 40 years ago, you had this ridiculous start of the tour in Germany with these sort of marathon 8-hour stages, one after another in horrendous rain, you know, across the Ardennes and the Vosges. So, and that took a massive toll on the riders. And you know, 1979. You had what was definitely the hardest ever opening weekend because they had they had a major mountain stage in the Pyrenees, followed by a mountain time trial up a super category climb, and then later on they went up Alpe d'Huez twice in 2 days. So so again, I think saying it's the hardest ever tour or whatever, it isn't really. It's kind of a dead end street. But I think what you have to say is that these bits of the tour and these things about it make it very, very hard. And there are no successions of easy days to sort of recover and get your rhythm. I mean, there are 2 flat days basically after the first rest day, but that's about as good as it gets, you know, in terms of days when the boys can get out of the bus and float along for 4 hours and then, you know, fight for an hour at the finish. You know, it's not, there's no succession of normal days. It's all stuff that's really difficult for them.
But they don't really do sprint stages anymore, hardly, do they? I mean, it's no. Everything's very geared towards a television audience. That, as Christian Prudhomme is the director of the tour, he always says that we've got to face up to generation zapping, which basically means people who are used to watching, you know, short clips online and want to see the action condensed into a very kind of, you know, bite-sized chunk. So the tour has changed a lot, even in the time I've been working on it. And I think, you know, you can see when you look at the route, you can see they are looking for kind of crash bang wallop stages that will really grab the attention of a general sports audience rather than a kind of, you know, long-standing cycling.
Well, I remember the first tours I covered. They were very much to a template where you had a prologue time trial. You had a succession of flat stages where basically nothing would happen. You might throw a team time trial into it just to sort of ginger the boys up a bit. Then you'd have the Alps or the Pyrenees. Then you'd have some lumpy stages in between the Alps and the Pyrenees, depending which way you were going. And then you'd sort of go up to within reach of Paris for the final time trial on the final Saturday, and that would be it. You know, you'd have a long time trial off the flat stage. You had 2 long time trials, 2 mountain ranges, a little bit in the middle, bang, that's it. And that was how it kind of was. And it wasn't it was a formula that presumed that worked at the time. But as Jeremy says, we now want this all action, Tour de France, and also I think because all the stages now are covered live, start to finish. There's much more of an appetite for turning on the telly at lunchtime and getting through. You can watch the action from start to finish. It might take only 3.5 hours. Okay, you nip off and have a cup of tea a couple of times or whatever, but you can. It's not like having a 6 or 8 hour stage, which unless you're really obsessive, you wouldn't watch. But a 3.5 hour stage, you can watch start to finish if you've got nothing else to do that afternoon.
Well, here's the question then, and I've seen it written that this is the TikTok tour. Instead of it being a long read, it's short stories every day, as you said. It's Crash Bang Wallop. It's things because they've had to be more creative to get that sports audience. Is it a better tour for it?
I mean, I think we can only judge that at the end, really, can't we? I mean, we saw a great tour last year, slightly hampered, I suppose, by the cancellation of that Manchester stage into Tête, or not the cancellation, but the truncation of that Manchester stage into Tête, and we still don't know what would have happened on the final climb up to Tête. Would
have been a different winner of the Tour de France?
Well, it's a question you'll always have. I mean, I don't think so. Probably not, because I don't think there's going to be any problem with Egan Bernal. But you don't know. You don't know for sure. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Given that Team Ineos or Ineos Grenadiers, as they now are, haven't selected Geraint Thomas, because I think Geraint Thomas, until he becomes an old man, will be haunted by how close he got to winning the 2019 Tour. And he might even be thinking, if I'd had one beer less in December, that could have made all the difference, because he was achingly close to matching Egan Bernal. I mean, he was within touching distance of matching Egan Bernal, and I don't know, he was very close. But anyway, I think what we'll see is a tour that I think will match up with last year. I think it will be quite tight, quite close. It'll be a small group at the top of the classification. So there's obvious contenders like Primož Roglič, Egan Bernal, Thibaut Pinot. Then there's kind of people who are going to be there or thereabouts, like Nairo Quintana, Tom Dumoulin. You'd think all people who've got a real pedigree in Grand Tours.
Mikel Landa,
yeah. So, and there's going to be people who ghost in, I think, maybe a bit as well, who they don't really emerge until the final week.
I think there's some left field candidates. I'll put Alaphilippe as a left field candidate. I'll put someone like Danny Martinez or Higuita. I think he can win. I think he can win, but I think he's a left field candidate to win, if you see what I mean. Because he's not an obvious favourite. But to me, this is a route that is basically been designed for him. That's why we haven't got these great big long high mountains in the Pyrenees, and particularly in the Alps. We haven't got anything like the Iseran or the Galibier. What we've got is these short punchy climbs, and we've got lots and lots of opportunities. It's not a tour that's designed to be easy for a team like Ineos or even Jumbo to control. And I think that is going to create openings for riders like Alaphilippe and quite possibly Landa, and possibly the likes of Higuita, Martinez, possibly Pogacar, those sort of slightly left field guys who you wouldn't always predict.
I mean, you look at the makeup of the favourites, and you definitely say that the British are going and the Latin Americans are arriving, wouldn't you?
Totally, it's the arrival of the South Americans. Because you have to put Carapaz into the mix as well. Richard Carapaz, winner of the Giro last year, hasn't ridden the Tour before, but he's clearly an immensely good climber, clearly very resilient. If you can win the Giro at your first attempt, then it's not a given you'll win the Tour at your first attempt, but you certainly can't be put out of the picture.
So who's the favourite for you then? Is it Bernal, defending champion?
I'm not sure. I mean, I thought that before we saw him look a little bit. I know he had back issues supposedly, but he looked just a little bit short of where you'd expect him to be in both the Tour de l'Ain, which was one of the recent build-up races, and also the Dauphiné, which was the most recent warm-up race in the French Alps. I thought he just looked okay. He quit the Dauphiné on the final day because of his back, or the final weekend. Yeah. But I don't know what you thought, William. I thought he looked a little bit just short of where you'd expect him to be.
I think there's two caveats. One is that the Dauphiné is closer to the Tour this year, so it's harder, I think, to be good in the Dauphiné, then back off a little bit, and then pick up your form at the Tour. You're probably not looking to be at your very best at the Dauphiné. You want to be slightly below your best and building. So I think that's why the Dauphiné is possibly slightly deceptive for all of us. Personally, I thought the guy who looked really, really, really good at the Dauphiné was Tom Dumoulin. I just thought Dumoulin's form looked to build. Obviously, he didn't race last year particularly much, didn't get to the Tour last year, but I just think the way he also looks smaller than I remember him from the past. I remember him as looking slightly more bulky. I think he may have leaned down a bit, but I just thought he looked absolutely superb. And the main thing the thing that you were looking for in the Dauphiné this year was who's in control. Who's in control of what they're doing, and the guy who looked in control of what he was doing was Dumoulin. And I thought Roglic looked good until he fell off, obviously. And obviously Danny Martinez looked very good in winning it as well. But Pinot didn't look particularly in control of things. I didn't sense that he was precisely where he wanted to be. Alaphilippe, I think he's in control as well. I think he's building. And again, if you look at the French Championship on Sunday, he looked in superb form there. And and Milan-San Remo, okay, didn't win it, but again, he was in superb form there too. So I think I would be looking at Alaphilippe and Dumoulin, and Bernal, you'd be an idiot to say, oh, he's not going well or anything like that. But I wouldn't put him as the head and shoulders favourite above everyone else.
Do you think then, this year, for the first time possibly, I don't know in how many years, do you think that Ineos go into this Tour as not the strongest team? Because they've had such a rock and roll star-studded lineup for so long. But you look at that Jumbo-Visma lineup and you look at the riders they've got there. Even though we know Roglic had a fall, he's still going to be going there. You've got Dumoulin, who you mentioned. You've got Sepp Kuss, who looked so good at the Dauphiné as well in that final stage, looked unflustered taking that win. Do you think Jumbo-Visma are the strongest team, are the best team going into this Tour?
I'd have to say that, but it doesn't feel to me that they don't have the backstory that Ineos have, obviously, because Ineos as Sky and as Ineos have this incredible record of 6 British wins in 8 years, plus the Bernal win last year as well. So they've been absurdly successful, and Jumbo-Visma are just kind of beginning really as a super team. They're in their earliest, not their earliest form, but they're still learning that way of riding. I think it doesn't feel like they're quite the finished article. And I think there's a big difference between doing that over a 3-day mountain race or a 5-day mountain race to 3 weeks. Obviously, it's very reliant on people staying upright, on people staying uninjured, unfatigued, all of that kind of thing. And as the thing Ineos and the Brailsford managed teams are masters at is making sure when the last week comes, it's always about the last week for them. When the last week comes, they are exactly where they need to be. And it's very rare. If you look at all their Grand Tour wins, everything's still in place in the last week. The jigsaw isn't falling apart. They're still intact.
Yeah, I'd agree with you with that, Jeremy. I think Jumbo are very strong, but I don't think they're the finished article. I also think I think my sense would be that their strategy depended on having Steven Kruijswijk as well, because I think if you can put 3 very, very good potential winners up against Ineos's 2, then suddenly it's a very different game. But I think you're right, and I don't think that as a team in the Tour they're the finished article. I think they're missing. They're also going to miss Laurens de Plus, their climber who's been ill and is going to go to the Giro instead. He was very good last year. I think they are without doubt the biggest threat that the Brailsford teams have faced since 2012 when they started winning the Tour. Do you not think that?
I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens if Roglic is really crocked. I mean, there's all these rumours about Roglic, not being fit, and he hasn't been on the bike hardly at all since the crash in the Dauphiné. And then I asked the team yesterday morning, I said, what is the situation? Because L'Équipe ran a story saying he was still a doubt. L'Équipe, the French national sports newspaper.
2 hours later, L'Équipe ran a story saying he wasn't.
Yes, because everybody ran a story saying Roglic is a big doubt for the Tour, and the team kept saying no, he's not. So, Be interesting to see whether he will start, and that's maybe as far, he'll get through the first week, and then his injuries will be exacerbated by starting the tour. Maybe he should just be resting, but they're definitely going to start him, and then hope for the best, I guess, and hope that he rides it off, and any lingering pain that he has rides it off, and then by the time he really needs to be in his very top form towards the end of the tour, he's there. But if he isn't, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that team.
I think if he's in form, he obviously will be a huge threat. But it's another of these great unknowns, And it's interesting that Bora are doing something similar with Max Schachmann, who crashed in the Dauphiné, and everyone thought, Schachmann's out of the tour. But lo and behold, here's Schachmann. Here's Dan Martin, turning out for Israel Cycling Academy again. Looked like he was out of the tour. So it's interesting, these riders who are turning up. And I'm kind of intrigued as to do they sense, as we sense, that maybe the season isn't going to go much beyond October? Maybe it's like, let's do it now. Let's I don't know.
But it could also be that because of the particular circumstances that surrounding cycling at the moment, and everybody's very paranoid about the business model and, sponsorship and their contracts continuing. And we saw a good example of that this afternoon when it was announced that Mclaren have pulling out of the Bahrain Mclaren sponsorship. So that will no longer be Bahrain Mclaren at the end of this year. The riders are living in a climate where every race could almost be their last. And I think, They may well be worried about if the pandemic continues. How much will they race next year? How long will they earn at the level they're earning now? So there must be a massive incentive to shrug off pain and to shrug off injury and to keep going.
You mentioned Dave Brailsford before. You spoke to him earlier on, didn't you, Jeremy?
I did, yeah.
Were either of you surprised? I mean, maybe you could talk about this after having spoken to him, Jez. Surprised when he left out Froome, possibly because of the injury last year. But Geraint Thomas, were either of you surprised when, I think the phrase is, he stabbed them in the front?
Yeah. He doesn't see it that way. I wasn't surprised. No, not really. It seems like, you're leaving out kind of your the guys who bring the money in, and the guys who bring in the audience, and the guys who bring in all the marketing stuff that goes around it. I mean, it was interesting today when Ineos rebranded as Ineos Grenadiers, this kind of quite tortuous name, which is associated with a new super Jeep thing that Jim Ratcliffe has launched, called the Grenadiers. So the team are now Ineos Grenadiers. Froome and Thomas were both part of the launch and a big part of it. And when I spoke to Brailsford, he said his relationship with Froome was great. They had no problems. He said they had a good professional relationship and a personal relationship as well, and that they were fully behind supporting him to try and win the Vuelta. The guy I do feel has come out of this worst is Geraint Thomas, because I think people were pretty shocked that he wasn't in the team, given he was second overall last year. I think they're also quite shocked because watching him perform in the Dauphiné, it was hard. He hadn't had the injury problems that Froome has had, hadn't had the massive, career-threatening injuries that Froome went through, and the rehab and the recovery and the fight back from, intensive care that Froome had. It was quite extraordinary to see just how average he was in the Dauphiné and how quickly he let go as well on the climbs. And he was a shadow of himself. And I thought, to me, it felt like it was more than a physical thing. I don't know. Maybe it's not. There's been a lot of talk, and something I discussed with Brailsford this afternoon as well was how have they reacted to losing Nicolas Portal, who was their long-standing sports director, who really tragically died of a heart attack last spring. And it's no doubt that absolutely drove a kind of, that was an earthquake for the team, I think, for the riders and for Brailsford as well, because they were so used to having that kind of easygoing, tuzzle-haired, personable, chatty French guy who knew all the roads, knew all the other riders, having him in the team car, keeping their spirits up. And they've now got Gabriel Rasch as their head sports director, who's a Norwegian ex-pro. And he's quite a different guy, completely different kind of character, quiet, softly spoken. He hasn't got the same ready smile and the joshing nature that Nico Portal had. And it feels like there's a huge absence at the heart of that team. And whether that is a really big factor, I don't know. You think it wouldn't be, because riders are riders, and they ride on their qualities and their physical strengths and their mental resilience. But he was just so much. He was the embodiment of the kind of the camaraderie that they had, and he's gone.
I think I will miss Portal, as you say. I think I'll miss him severely, and I don't see them filling the void, because if you like, as I see it, Nicolas emerged in 2013 after the team let Sean Yates go, and Yates obviously had that immense presence and that feeling for the riders, and he also had that massive knowledge. And he had the experience of managing Tour de France winning teams. And Nicolas obviously learned from Sean and then came of age under Froome. And so I just think that is another big question mark over Ineos. And to me, it's almost more of a question mark than the absence of Froome and Thomas. I think, obviously if Froome and Thomas were in their very best, you'd have them in the team, and there would be no question that you'd run a team with 3 potential winners, possibly. In spite of all the trouble that would bring, you might well gamble on that, But as it is, you're running, without Portal, it's a different picture,
I think it'd be a fool's errand at this point to try and do a prediction of what's going to happen at the end of the Tour. For the reasons all you've said before, we don't know if it's going to reach Paris. It's up and down. Every stage is different. But after the first, say, 4 days, what are your predictions of where we'll be?
Hang on.
After 4 days.
I thought we were doing predictions. I've got my top 3 in front of me. I'm happy.
What for the entirety of the race?
Yeah.
Go on then. What's your entirety? Okay. To hell with it. Go on then. End of the race. Who's winning? Will there be a French winner?
Bernal winning.
Okay.
I've got Roglic in second place. And I've got Danny Martinez.
I like it. I like it.
And that's based on, what is it based on? Pure guesswork.
Not years of experience, literally. No, just 3 names. Because the problem is, you've got a lot of people who've been training on their own. And there's been a few races leading up to this Tour de France. But as we've seen, I thought Geraint Thomas would be the one person who came out of lockdown in the best form. Somebody who'd gone through the British Cycling Academy, somebody who was older, somebody who knew how to hit numbers and follow a training plan. I honestly thought he would come out flying. And as you said, Jeremy, he looked like he was struggling and giving up. So no one knows what anyone's form is truly like over the course of 3 weeks.
Well, also, nobody's ridden a Grand Tour for the best part of a year, have they? So, nobody's ridden a longer stage race than kind of 4 or 5 days. So all bets are off, almost.
What's your top 3, William?
My top 3 is Dumoulin, because I just thought he looked like he's got his build up perfect. Alaphilippe in second, because I think the route is absolutely made for him, and I think all this stuff about I'm just going to try and win a stage is kind of it's kind of a diversionary tactic. And then Bernal, because he's supremely talented, but I think for a rider to win a first Tour and then go on to win a second Tour the year after is pretty rare. It's pretty difficult. We've gone through the various issues around Ineos. It's not ideal circumstances for them. And for that reason, I think third would be what I'd expect from him. I'm quite prepared to be proved wrong, though. Predicting anything in the Tour de France at this stage is always a mug's game.
No one's mentioning Thibaut Pinot. With the final TD up to La Planche de Belleville in his hometown, I think this is it. There's a lack of pressure on him, and I don't want to go against 2 people with the pedigree you have.
I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him win. Particularly because I just saw on Instagram here he's saying goodbye to his pet goats, and my heart went out to him because I just think that's so cute, and so lovely and so down home and so. I'm a huge Thibaut Pinot fan, and if he gets the yellow jersey and he's got the jersey with like 3 days to go or something, I'll be in front of my telly every afternoon, screaming my head off and, doing a Mark Madio, running in and out of the kitchen going, sit it on, So I'd love Pinot to win, but I don't want to predict it because it's one of those things where you want it to happen so much that you don't want to predict it because you put a hex on it.
Have you got your top 3, OJ?
No, I'm just going with Thibaut Pinot first, second and third. No, Thibaut Pinot to win it, Dumoulin second, and then Bernal third. is how I see it happening. I don't see this as Ineos's tour. I just don't. I see this as being a tour when a Frenchman wins it, finally, in the weirdest of circumstances. And I think, as you said, Dumoulin, who is a lovely guy and one of the nicest people I've ever interviewed on a bike ever, is just so thoughtful and so lovely. I'd love to see him do well. I'd love to see him not come second, but I do think Thibaut Pinot will be the first French winner for, how many years is it now? What is it? 20 odd years?
1985. Wow. The Badger.
The Badger. Let's finish by doing team presentations. By the time you'll listen to this, the team presentations might have happened. What are your thoughts on presentations? Do you love it? Is it the pageantry a Grand Tour needs?
I think it's something that's kind of bolted on value for sponsors, because, you know, for some of these teams who aren't Ineos, who aren't Jumbo-Visma, who aren't Groupama, FDJ, etc., that might be their biggest moment in the whole race, because there are teams who are definitely making up the numbers. There always are in Grand Tours. There are teams who, you know, hope that they can win a stage, that they can get into a breakaway, or maybe that they can have a really good lingering camera shot on the jersey at the team presentation. So I've always found them to be extremely cheesy. I don't think you learn anything as a journalist from them. They're quite often in very cheesy locations. I mean, I'm thinking, for some reason, I've just got Puy de Fou. It lodged in my head.
Puy de Fou is the one that I always think of, because we've been there twice.
Isn't that why it's like a kind of Excalibur, Arthurian legend, medieval dress?
Yep. It's all very Monty Python, the Holy Grail, and it's Madman's Hill, and it's the ruined castle in the middle of nowhere, and it's impossible to get to, and it's hysterical, but. I have sort of mixed feelings about team presentations. I never watch them. I mean, I've always got something better to do, unfortunately. I never watch them, but you know, I do. I can't help but sort of catch a glimpse. But you know, I find them hilariously naff. I mean, you see riders sort of cavorting around on boats. You see riders riding across, you know, reflective ponds and stuff. I'm sure there must have been pedalos. I think they are a necessary thing, but they are, and they're just. Yeah, it's all part of the great build-up to the great event, and that's what it's all about. It's all about build-up, and build-up is, let's face it, build-up is what we're doing here, you know.
Actually, there was one good one in Corsica. I think they brought them over to the docks on speedboats. So you had these kind of flotilla of speedboats. That was quite James Bond-like. I mean, that was kind of quite cool, you know. But
yeah. What if they did a team?
The questions are always terrible. You know, are your legs good? What are they going to say? Yeah.
Well, it's a very difficult. Having done things like that, it's very difficult to interview people who don't sometimes want to be there.
By and large, don't want to be there.
Yeah. What if they did a team presentation for the journalists? Would you be into that? Now, from The Guardian, Jeremy Whittle and William
That would be hysterical. That'd be the funniest thing ever.
Is your pen good?
How was your wrist? Are you writing well? How was your hotel?
Are there any restaurants along the route to which you are particularly drawn?
How many Madeleines do you have in your pockets? And there we go. That seems like a fine way to leave this first of the La Course on Tête podcast. There will be 4 more that's in association with Peloton Magazine. Thank you to the Aerogram listeners and Peloton Magazine subscribers for being there as well. If you want to check out La Course on Tête, we talked about it before and the fabulous writing that's on there. William, how do people do that?
It's www.lacourseontête.com.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jeremy Whittle. Thank you, Jeremy.
Cheers. All the best.
Thank you to William Fotheringham as well. Thank you,
OJ.
William. And that's it. This first podcast is wrapped up. As I said, there's 4 more. Please do make sure you subscribe. The next one will be back in a week's time, and there is a special guest. I can't tell you who it is because William would possibly take me out if I let that slip right now, so I'll leave it as a little tease. William will be back here, and also one of our other writers. We'll see you next time.